We must vote now. The general demands support.
He demands too much. The people are tired of this war.
Today, we are going to talk about a legal system that shapes the lives of literally billions of people, from London to Los Angeles, Sydney to Singapore. It's called the common law, and its story? Well, it doesn't start in some fancy parliament building. Nope, it starts on a bloody medieval battlefield.
So let me ask you something. You've seen it in a million courtroom dramas, right? The jury of 12 ordinary people holding someone's fate in their hands. Ever wonder where that idea came from? Well, the answer isn't in a law book. It's in a conquest. It started with a king who had just won a country and was, frankly, desperate to hold on to it. All right, so picture this. The year is 1066. William, the Duke of Normandy, sails across the English Channel, wins the Battle of Hastings, and boom, he's now William the Conqueror, King of England. But here's the thing. Winning the war, that was actually the easy part. The real challenge was just beginning. How do you rule this new kingdom?
William had this huge problem on his hands. He had thousands of knights and barons who fought for him, and he had to reward them with the biggest prize there was, land. But back home on the continent, this was a total trap. A king would give land to a powerful lord, and suddenly that lord's subjects were loyal only to him, not to the king. You'd end up with a kingdom full of mini kings, all just waiting for a chance to take you down.
But the Normans, they were clever. They completely flipped the script with one simple but totally revolutionary idea. Sure, a lord could grant land to his own followers, but the king demanded an oath of loyalty not just from the top guys, but from everyone, all the way down the chain. That meant no powerful duke could build his own private army, because at the end of the day, every single soldier's ultimate loyalty was to the crown. And just like that, you have the foundation for a strong, centralized state.
And to really tighten his grip, William ordered the creation of something incredible, the Domesday Book. This was basically a massive, kingdom-wide audit, a detailed survey of every single piece of land, every mill, every pig, every person. It was so thorough, people said it was like the final day of judgment. There was just no escaping it. This gave the king an insane amount of financial and administrative control.
Okay, so William and the kings who came after him had military control and financial control locked down. But a kingdom isn't really one kingdom without a single system of justice for everyone. And at the time, England was just a messy patchwork of local customs and different local courts. So how do you fix that?
See, building a bunch of new royal courts all over the country was a bad idea. They could just become the new local power bases the kings were trying to avoid. So one of his successors, King Henry II, came up with a genius workaround. If the people can't easily get to the King's Court in Westminster, well then, the King's Court will come to them. And he created a system of traveling royal judges. And this created this amazing feedback loop. First, the judges would ride out from London, go all over the country and hear local cases. And while they were there, they'd listen and they'd learn the local customs. Then, and this is the most important part, they would all go back to Westminster. They'd get together, they'd talk, they'd debate the cases and customs they saw. They'd pick the best, most fair, most reasonable ideas and turn them into standardized rules. Then, the next time they went out, they applied that same rule everywhere. Pretty soon, you had a law that was common to the entire kingdom.
So here's the absolute key takeaway. The common law wasn't written down by some parliament in a big book of codes. No, it was built case by case, decision by decision, by judges. It grew organically out of real disputes between real people. And this idea of precedent, the idea that a decision in one case should be followed in other similar cases, that became its absolute bedrock. But wait, there was still a massive hole in this system. You have judges and courts, great, but how do you figure out who's actually telling the truth? How do you decide the basic facts of a case? Before the jury system, justice was, well, pretty brutal and weird. You might have to do a trial by ordeal. You'd be forced to, say, carry a piece of red-hot iron. If your hand healed nicely, great, God said you were innocent. Or you might be thrown in a river. If you sank, you were innocent. It was basically just superstition, and it was wildly unreliable. The Norman kings needed anything better.
The solution was the jury. Now, at first, jurors were just local people who were brought in as witnesses. They were expected to already know what happened. But over time, the system evolved into something way more powerful. And the best way to understand it is to think of that classic movie, 12 Angry Men. The jurors in that movie, they're not debating the legal definition of murder. They are laser-focused on one thing and one thing only: what actually happened. And this gets us to the most fundamental split in any common law courtroom. It's the division between a question of fact and a question of law. If you can get this, you get the whole system. Let's just use the examples from 12 Angry Men again. Think about the questions they're asking. Could the witness really have heard that shout over the sound of a roaring train? Was it physically possible for the old man to get to his front door in just 15 seconds? These are all questions of fact. The jury's job is not to interpret a statute. It's to use their common sense and life experience to weigh the evidence and figure out what's what. So you see the divide, right? It's crystal clear. The jury answers the question of fact. Their verdict is their answer, guilty or not guilty. Then the judge handles the question of law. Based on the jury's finding, the judge applies the correct legal rules and passes sentence. It's a genius division of labor, a powerful check on the power of the state, put right into the hands of a person's peers. So what started as these really practical, on-the-ground solutions for a conqueror's problems, well, they became so effective that they hardened into formal institutions and procedures that have, incredibly, lasted for almost 1,000 years. So back then, you couldn't just walk into a royal court with a problem. You first had to go to the king's office and basically buy a right, a formal written order. Think of it like a key. Each type of legal problem had its own specific key. If your complaint didn't fit one of the existing keys, well, you were out of luck. The system made the law predictable, but it also made it very rigid, and it controlled who got access to the king's justice. And over time, the whole system got more organized. The king's court specialized into different departments. The court of the exchequer, that was the tax court. The king's bench handled the really serious criminal cases that affected the king's peace. But the real engine room, the place where most of the common law was hammered out, was the court of common pleas. This is where everyday disputes between regular people were sorted out, building the rules of our world one painful case at a time. So think about it. A system designed to centralize a conqueror's power accidentally ended up creating these incredible legal principles we hold so dear today. A law developed by independent judges and the fundamental right to be tried by a jury of your peers. It was an accidental revolution, born from practice, not from some grand theory. So the next time you're watching a courtroom drama, just remember, you're not just watching a story, you're watching the 900-year-old legacy of a conqueror's kingdom.
Knowledge transcends time. Truth endures.